Hello everybody, Flyaway Jay here and welcome to another flight on my Walker Air Transport Nordics tour. I hope you have all settled in well into 2023 and are pre-flighting yourselves for a great year ahead. This is flight 2450, where we will take off from Sandane Airport, Echo November Sierra Delta, where we had a pretty interesting approach and landing with this very same WB-Sim Charlie 172. We had to deal with some crosswinds blowing directly across the runway, making for a very crabbed landing, but the approach was altogether quite beautiful. We've got some high hills on either sides of this airport, which I guess adds to the windy effects that we feel on landing. Today we're again going to be flying the trusty WB-Sim Charlie 172 and continuing on with our westward journey towards the coast of Norway. We're going to be landing at Floro Airport, Echo November Foxtrot Lima. Judging by the weather, this is definitely going to be a test of my IFR skills, so we'll get the aircraft set up using GPS, and we'll probably be doing an instrument approach into Floro Airport. Our flight today will be carrying myself as the crew with 3 passengers, taking on 94 kilograms of fuel. Our takeoff weight will be 1,146 kilograms, which is within the max takeoff weight for the Charlie 172. Our route today will be covering a distance of 74 nautical miles and cruising around 100 knots airspeed, which should give us a range of about 300 nautical miles with the amount of fuel we have in the tanks. The initial cruise will be 3,500 foot above mean sea level, but depending on what the route looks like and what the weather looks like, we may try taking some views from the fjords below, or alternatively, if we have to get over some icing conditions, we have to climb over and around these clouds. As usual, we're flying with live weather, and I will be in observer mode on VATSIM, so hopefully we can see and hear some other traffic in the area. The weather today, as you can see, isn't great for touring Norway, so unfortunately we might be stuck in some clouds on this short trip to Floro. From a METAR perspective, the conditions today are light winds blowing variable degrees at 3 knots. QNH at this airport is 1009er. Current temperature on the ground is 1 degree centigrade, or just under 34 degrees Fahrenheit. The weather goes from a bit of frozen rain or sleety rain. I haven't seen any snow yet, but let's see how we go. We'll be taking off from runway 08 this morning at Sandane and landing on runway 07 at Floro. A little bit about Floro Airport. The airport was built in 1956 and serves today as a regional airport, catering for the town of Floro in the Kinn municipality in Norway. It has a 1,264 meter runway, which is used by various airlines and helicopters serving the North Sea oil platforms. From a sim perspective, I'll also be using FS Realistic Pro and Navigraph, both of which I purchased recently. Both these add-ons are excellent additions to your flight simulation experience, and I highly suggest you check them out. If, however, there are any add-ons you'd like to see me use on my flight, drop a comment below and I'll be sure to check them out. And again, if you like my videos and would like to support the channel, please like and subscribe. Every like and every subscription is greatly appreciated. And if you'd ever like to join me on a flight, send me a message and let's fly together. I'd be glad to share the skies with you. We're here to learn, to have fun, and to share the joy of aviation, so feel free to pop me a question in the comments or a comment in the comments, and I'll try my best to answer. So without further ado, let's jump in the cockpit and come fly with me. Okay, welcome aboard this Charlie 172. As is the norm, we're in a cold and dark state. As you can see, we've removed all the tie downs, all the cowl covers, and also the pitot tube cover. The aircraft is in pretty much a good state to get started. Just panning around the aircraft here, you can see in the background the weather is not looking too great. We'll be taking off in the direction immediately behind the tail there, trying to gain some altitude before we can turn into the direction that we'll be headed towards Floro. Runway is completely covered in ice today and snow. We are quite heavy today, so hopefully with some winds blowing down the runway we can get some good airspeed. If you look in the direction that we're going to be traveling into, it seems to be clearing up a bit, so hopefully it's only the departure that would require some IFR instruments. So first things first, on the checklist, we have to check the parking brake just to make sure that we don't roll forward. That we can confirm is checked. Fuel selector valve needs to be on both. So if we look down here in the bottom, this is the fuel selector valve. We can choose between left, right, or both in the center. So we're going to make sure it's on both. The fuel shutoff valve needs to be fully in, allowing the fuel to flow from the tanks into the fuel system. From a throttle perspective, we need to make sure that the throttle is a 1/4 inch in, should be about there. The mixture should be at idle cutoff all the way back here. Idle cutoff obviously means that no fuel is flowing into the engine. At this point we can turn on the master switch, split in two, alternator and battery. And with the power flowing to the aircraft systems, we can turn on the beacon, which turns on the external light, indicating to people around the aircraft that the aircraft is about to start up. In order to prime the engine, what we're going to do now is to turn on the fuel pump and then push the mixture in until we see some movement on the fuel flow. So I'm actually going to zoom in on the fuel flow so we can have a bit of view at that. So fuel pump, it goes on, mixture goes to the full rich position, and we can just see that needle moving slightly. Just going to cycle that once or twice. Fuel flow is active, and turn that back off. What that should do is prime the fuel system and to make sure that there's enough fuel to get the engine started. As you'd remember last time, we had some trouble starting the engine. Not sure what that was due to, but basically we increased the mixture, increased the throttle, and made sure that there was definitely enough fuel in the engine, and we finally got it started. What we need to do now is actually get the aircraft started. So how we do that is we turn the ignition to start, and then to both, and then as we do that we advance the mixture to full rich to get a good engine start. So let's do that.
Clear prop.
Try that again. Seems like with this cold weather we definitely have some trouble starting the engine. I haven't had this issue in normal temperature before. So let's try it with a bit of fuel. Full rich. And there we have it. A good start. Okay, we're just going to set the throttle to 1200 RPM just to warm up the engine slightly before we take off. As we can see, temperatures and pressures are in the green. The vacuum is in the green arc. Battery is charging. Fuel levels are looking good. Fuel flow is looking fine. And what we really want to see is this oil temperature just warming up, so we've make sure that there's enough oil flowing around the engine. Before we taxi, we turn on the nav lights, which are these lights over here. That is the green and red lights on either wing. Goes there. The taxi lights at this point can go on. Avionics, we can turn on both and just allow those to boot up and set themselves up for the departure. Altimeter we can set to the local QNH, which is 1009er. And then that gives us the airfield elevation. Pitot heat, definitely in these conditions I'll turn that on just to make sure we don't get any icing on the pitot heat. From a flaps perspective, just before we take off, I'll put those down. Flight controls at this point, we can have a good look and see if they are free, full and correct. Those are good. Mixture at this point, we'll just leave it at full rich and we'll lean it as we start the taxi. Before we get going, I just want to set up quickly the route for the departure. I'm not really going to follow procedure, so, well, in fact, probably we should follow procedure. I just want to select the departure. Not sure why nothing is showing up here. We're just going to hit a direct to here. Echo November. Echo November. Foxtrot. And Lima. Echo November, Foxtrot, Lima, and Floro is indicated. We'll just turn that on and activate that. At this point we need to make sure that the GPS mode is activated here. For the autopilot, we're just going to set the barometric pressure to local QNH 1009 and set that. Initial departure altitude we're going to set at 3,500 for now. Score code today is 1534. We're going to set that to standby. As we move on to the runway, we'll turn that on and alt eventually. Alright, we should be good and set up to start this flight. Obviously from a VATSIM perspective, I just want to see if there's any controllers in the area. And I'll tune the radios to those frequencies. Doesn't look like there's anyone too close. We're just going to go 119.6. And that is Sandane approach. And activate that. Okay, I think we're pretty much ready to get going. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn the strobe lights on, taxi lights are on, and let's get this show on the road. Brakes can go off, and we just gently start that taxi. Unfortunately, because of this airport not having a taxiway, we're going to have to backtrack on the actual runway, which is not a problem. Just barely see the taxi lines, which will follow. Quite a short little runway this. At this point, we will turn on the altimeter onto alt mode. Okay, we're just going to turn around here and line up with the runway. Because we're quite heavy, I'm going to try and attempt a short field takeoff. Yeah. Just going to hold short here. Set flaps. Just gonna run through some checks quickly. Fuel pump can stay on. Mixture full rich. Throttles is good. Flaps are down. Transponders on alt. GPS is set. Landing lights can come on. Taxi lights can come off. Pitot heaters on. Mags on both. Temperatures and pressures are looking good. Alright. Ready for takeoff. Setting takeoff power. Standing on the brakes. Temperatures and pressures are good, and release the brakes. Looking for 60 knots. Maintain that center line. 40 knots, airspeed's alive. Bit of a wind. 60 knots. And rotate. You can see the wind is actually picked up quite significantly. A little bit bumpy. Just going to try and climb out as quickly as possible. I'm going to turn up some of these cockpit lights so we can see a bit better. Looking for 74 in the climb. Flaps can come up. What we're trying to do now is gain some altitude in order to get us over these hills to either side of us. Just trimming out the aircraft for a nice climb. Here we go. Just going to turn the autopilot on. And set the heading bug to the direction we want to head. The aircraft is now in control. Should head about 070. So we've got the option of staying below these clouds if not sure why we're descending here. I just want to set the vertical speed. If we can stay below the clouds and be above the minimum safe altitude, we'll definitely do that. I'm going to slowly start my turn to the right and in the direction of our GPS track. Making sure we stay well clear of these mountains. Landing light can come off now. Fuel pump can come off. Everything else can stay on. And we just continue this gentle climb. Definitely not high enough to start going across. We're 1,000 feet below our altitude in the autopilot. Outside temperature at the moment is 27, or -3, which is below freezing, obviously. So we really don't want to get into any icing conditions. Not like last time with the PC6, which was definitely a learning experience. Just going to set the autopilot altitude slightly higher and increase the rate of climb a little bit more. Looks like we'll definitely head into some clouds. You can see some moisture running across the window. And there we have some traffic. I suppose the correct thing to do is to turn to Unicom. Which is 122.8. There we go, 122.8. That's the VATSIM frequency for uncontrolled airspaces. Okay, going to continue the turn further to the right. We're ultimately looking for heading 240 to get us to Floro. I just want to make sure that we're clear of all of these mountains in front here. Continuing with the turn to 240. Looks like we'll definitely be into some clouds, and I can unfortunately already see some icing starting here in the windshield. Trying to see if there's any way around it at this point. So I'm definitely not going through that again. Okay, let's turn slightly to the south. I'm going to go for this gap over here and just wind our way down to Floro. I'm going to increase the altitude significantly. We're going to go up to 9,500. With the vertical speed set at about 500. It's going to continue routing further south, so hopefully we can head towards this bright patch over here. Just turning on the cockpit lights a little bit brighter. Still on local QNH. Once we reach 7,000 feet in Norway, do we switch over to 7,000 feet? Sorry, correction. Standard temperature and pressure. Standard pressure. Which is 1013. Just going to keep aiming for these gaps in the clouds. Hopefully minimize some of the icing risks, but then also try and get on course. Fuel flow is looking fine. It's going to come back on the mixture slightly so we can get that EGT up a little bit, and also decrease the fuel flow. Here we go. Looks pretty good. We are still in the climb, so throttle setting is quite high. It's going to increase that to the top. But so far so good. Hopefully once we get through these clouds over here, we might be in a better position to, you know, see a bit of sights. Just want to try and avoid as much of the icing as possible. But hey, this is why we do it. Look at these sceneries. Wow, that is incredible. We're kind of routing in the direction of Floro. Our arrival will kind of bring us to the southern end of Floro, so we'll be turning northbound and then right hand turn onto the runway for finals. We'll set up for an RNAV approach. So I'm just going to set that up while we climb. Just watching the airspeed there, slowing down slightly. Just going to decrease that climb rate a little bit so we don't end up in a stall. So we're looking for the Emler arrival, or the old S arrival. Just watching that airspeed. Emler 1Q, that's it. Runway 07, and we'll load that. Just keeping an eye on that airspeed. Getting some buffeting from these high hills. Icing still seems under control, but definitely not 0. I want to turn on to heading 240. Airspeed is still good for the climb, but seems to be dropping. Just going to decrease that climb rate. Not sure why we struggling so much at this point. Gonna try and gain some airspeed here. Looking a bit better. Hopefully we can make it through that gap on the right here. Get out of the icing conditions. (7,000 feet). We can turn to standard pressure on the barometers, so 1013, which is over there, and on the autopilot, same thing, 1013, and set that. It's going to set up the approach. Transition is going to be Pogox. I'm going to enter that. And I'm going to load that. So far so good. Really struggling in the climb here. Not even climbing at a high rate. 300 feet per minute is really slow. At this point, we're actually going to route direct to Pogox. So now we're heading straight to Pogox. We don't have to go through the full star. And we can pretty much join the star right at the end just before we start the approach. And into the clouds we go. I was hoping this wouldn't happen. Oh well, I guess we get to enjoy that nice Norwegian glow that we've gotten used to. With some breaks in the clouds here and there. And obviously the typical icing. Hopefully once we break above these clouds, we should, well past these clouds, we should be able to at least get some clear weather. Just do a quick scan of the aircraft. EGT is good. I can bring the mixture slightly back on that. That's perfect. Fuel's still looking good. Temperatures and pressures are good. Vacuum is in the green arc. And the battery is charging. Fuel pump is off. Beacons on. Landing lights off. Taxi lights are off. Nav lights remain on. Strobe is on. Pitot heat remains on for obvious reasons. And everything else seems fine. And maintaining a good track to our first waypoint. And finally out of some icing conditions. I'm actually going to go into heading mode just briefly, just to try and get us around these gigantic clouds. Very slow in the climb at the moment. Airspeed's looking fine. Just want to break through these clouds. You can see the tops are not too far away, so hopefully by the time we reach 9,500 foot, we'll be in a good position. There we go, it's not looking too bad. Just going to keep flying towards the open areas. That's looking good. We might even be in some sun. And there we go, some clearish skies. Just actually going to resume the route to Bogux. And just update the GPS track and then hit nav mode at this point. Aircraft will turn back onto the heading to route us directly to Bogux. Wow, look at that. This is why I really enjoy flying with live weather. Just adds some beautiful clouds and scenery. Particularly in these northern regions. It's been quite a treat flying around the Nordics. Beautiful part of the world. From a route perspective, we've still got roughly 33.8 nautical miles to run to our first waypoint, which is going to be Pogux, and at that point that's when we're going to start our approach. Just a couple hundred feet, hopefully we can get on top of these clouds. I might actually just go up to 10,000. Just to ensure that we get on top of them. Very great little aircraft this. Let's have a look at how many hours I've done in here. 4.7. And on the tack, also 4.7. About 500 feet to go till we reach 10,000 feet. Oh, and there we actually have some snow or ice that we're flying into. I might even go 1,000 feet higher at the risk of becoming hypoxic. Should be okay though. It's definitely been one of our longest climbs in this aircraft. But she's held up well, temperatures and pressures are looking good. Haven't been at full throttle, just above 2500 RPM. Our descent is going to be, our top of descent should be coming up fairly soon. We need to be at Pogux at 4,000 feet. So with about 8 minutes to go, we'll start a roughly 800 foot per minute descent. Just a little bit higher. And there we have it, some clear skies. Finally. Just so you can see what I'm doing on Navigraph. We're following the low en route. It's going to clear this. Basically we're going to Floro, which is over there. I'm just going to create a new flight. I'm going to go manual input. It's Standard IFR. We're gonna go Echo November Foxtrot Lima. Echo November Sierra Delta. Not going to worry too much about the alternate for now. I'm going to say create this route, and what that'll do is set up pretty much a direct to line between Sandane and Floro. But what we want to add to this now is our arrival. We're doing the MLA1Q arrival, but we are routing direct to this waypoint here, which is the Pogux. So what we'll do from there is we'll say we're going to be doing the RNAV runway 7 approach, and it'll actually add that in. So what we're doing today is we're actually taking a bit of a shortcut straight to Pogux and then joining the approach at that point. At Pogux, which is over here, we need to be at 4,000 foot. Go around procedure is pretty much take off to the right, climb and head into a holding pattern at Gosley. Nice thing about these Navigraph charts is you can have various types of maps available to you, all the while overlaying your approaches. So you can say overlay the approach that we're going to follow, and there you have it. So now you can see exactly the approach that we're doing into Floro, overlaid beautifully on your world map. Definitely a piece of software that is well worth purchasing. Okay, back to flying. Cool, so we're finally in some clear skies. Icing looks like it's reducing. Climb is still going well. We're almost at 11,000 feet. Slow climb at 200 feet per minute, with about 20 minutes left to run on this leg. Just really hoping we can clear up all that ice before we have to land. Not a lot of traffic, also no controllers in the area at the moment, particularly not where we're headed. It's all good though. At least my window or my windshield is not all the way iced over, which is obviously great. And there we have it, 11,000 feet. Just gonna watch that EGT for the cruise. I'm just gonna keep the throttle at its current position. 2500 RPM is fine. We'll gain some airspeed and hopefully make up some lost time due to the extended climb we had to do. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Closing in on Pogux. 21.3 nautical miles to run. It's going to take us about 14 minutes. Shouldn't be too long. Might as well have a look around the aircraft. See some of the cool features. We'll go into approach mode once we set it here on the autopilot, and also make sure that it's set on the Garmin GNS 530. Making good speed. Ground speed is currently 91 knots. Just gonna keep an eye on this Navigraph chart. Wait for everything to load in. Not sure why it's taking so long. Oh, there we go. And just waiting for that overlay to come back. I'll just minimize it for now. So just some interesting facts about the town of Floro. It was founded by royal decree in 1860. It's actually Norway and Scandinavia's most westernmost town. Quite a nice feature. It is the most western town on the mainland in the Nordic countries. Interesting. It has a population of about 9,024 people. Quite densely populated, with 1,399 inhabitants per square kilometer. The municipality is named after the farm Flora, and the name, it is thought, is probably derived from the word flow, and apologies to the Norwegians for my bad pronunciations, but it basically means a strong stream. One of the great things about these tours on Walker Air is that you get to see some places that you ordinarily wouldn't usually fly to, unless you sort of tried a, you know, like a scheduled route or whatever. So it's quite a unique, quite a fun thing to do. Just have a look and see if this is loaded in properly. Okay, that's fine. I just want to display that chart again as an overlay, so you can all see how far we are. And there we are, pretty much just coming onto this approach chart. From an icing perspective, we're looking great. No ice to speak of. So your alternatives when you experience icing is either to climb higher out of the icing conditions or lower if possible. Obviously the difficulty with lower is you can't go down into the terrain. So by climbing over it or higher if you can, that's often a good solution. I was hoping to fly quite low today, and I think actually at this point we could descend slowly. We're going to be past the terrain, so I'm going to actually start a slow descent down to 4,000 feet, which is where we should be for the Pogux waypoint. So altimeter, let's set that down to about 800 or 700 feet per minute. I'm going to come back on the throttle a little bit. While we descend. Airspeed's still looking good. Just going to keep the mixture about half in. Helps us burn off some of that fouling. So interestingly, on this WB-Sim Cessna 172, if you click on this little ADF panel over here, you'll actually see the engine health is recorded here, the oil level, realism is on. So we actually have to maintain this engine, make sure it's looked after. Really adds to the realism of this aircraft. Just going to keep 100 knots in the descent. Should have us at Pogux at 4,000 feet. Looking good so far. Temperature outside is still quite low, minus 11 degrees. Finally, some ocean. Just keeping an eye on that airspeed and that altitude in the descent. Six nautical miles to run, 3,000 feet to descend. Airspeed is looking fine. Okay, we can set to the altimeters to local, which is 1009. Barometric pressure here, 1009. Landing light can come on. At this point we can also have a look at the procedures that have been set up. We can check our flight plan. Approach localizer 7, that's perfect. It's going to slow us down a little bit. We've got 2.5 minutes to run. And start slowing down for the descent. I want to be on the white arc, so 90 knots at Pogux. Just as a backup, we can set up the localizer for this runway. Which is 108.9er. And here we go. We've got the waypoint indicator flashing, telling us we're getting near the waypoint, where we're going to be starting our approach. At this point, we can set up the approach. Approach is now active, and the aircraft will fly us into, or on the approach, shall I say. You can see with the magenta line, the approach is now currently active. Okay, there's 90 knots. So at this point, we're going to be following the approach. So I just want to pop that up again. So I'm just going to have the overlay again. So we need to be at Uposa at 3,200. So we're going to set that down. 3-2 and start the descent to that. Aircraft should make a turn to the right now once it's intercepted the GPS track or the approach track. Okay, we've set the altitude. Is armed, so the aircraft will fly us down now. Okay, still 90 knots. Looking for 3,200 by the time we get to Oposa. Just going to slow the aircraft down somewhat. Just want to get us down onto altitude a little bit high at this waypoint. And at this point we're turning onto finals for runway 07. At least we've got some visibility, and there's the runway. Taking us back onto the GPS. I'm not sure why she's turning so hectically. I'm actually going to hand fly her at this point. Autopilot can come off. And there's our runway. Gonna come back a little bit on the speed. Actually gonna move back to less approach for now. Quite a wind blowing. Despite my significant crab angle, I'm not even getting on the localizer. Gonna have to add some speed. Aircraft is set up for the approach. I might not use much flaps. Thought the wind was quite light here, or meant to be quite light. Apparently it's very strong. Just want to keep the airport in sight. There we go. Back almost on the localizer. Very bumpy weather at the moment. Just another tricky landing for Flyaway J. Airspeed is still a little bit high for us to put down the flaps. So I think what we're going to have to do is just keep them up if the wind doesn't calm down. Just making minor corrections to keep us on this glide slope. And there we have it. Why do I do this? Just trying to come down a little bit on the airspeed. Wind is coming from the right, so I'm just going to try and keep that wing low. Just going to try and crab her in. Gonna start slowing down. Looking for about 75-ish knots. Unfortunately, it's really gusty. There we go. Just gonna use one stage of flaps at this point. Gonna maintain that airspeed. Don't want to drop below 70 here. Just so I can coax her into the ground. Gonna let the wind drift us slightly back onto the center line. 80 knots. Just gonna maintain that speed. Don't want to stall in the approach. Very bumpy. 80 knots still. Just maintain that center line using the rudder. Okay, we're gonna gently put her down on the runway. A little bit high. Definitely some wind. Okay, just gonna... Yep, cut the power. And there we go. Welcome to Floro. Just another tricky approach. You can feel the wind is howling behind me. I'm standing on the rudder trying to keep her straight. Didn't expect this level of wind. Just going to exit the runway quickly. And quickly set the aircraft up. Standby. Landing light come off. Taxi light can come on. Fuel pump off. Beacon on. Left strobe can come off. Everything else is good. Pitot heat can come off. Flaps are up. Okay. What we need to do now is taxi to the little terminal building here at Floro. Check for other traffic. Wow, that was a tricky landing, but we made it. Okay, just gotta manage this aircraft with this wind. Just have to taxi around this vehicle, unfortunately. The wind is definitely working its way across this airfield. The aircraft is again weather vaning into the wind. I'm actually going to park nearer to the heliport. Come on, turn. Oh gosh, not this problem again. Got to overpower the wind over the tail, which also means that we get turned into a race car. And I'm just going to turn slightly here into the wind. Just to make sure that the wind doesn't blow this aircraft over. We'll park her nicely lined up with the wind, and that should be about there. Okay, set the throttle to 1000 RPM. Okay, after landing, shutdown checks. First things first, flaps are retracted, correct. Landing lights are off. Strobe lights are off. Parking brake is set to allow us to not roll around in this wind. Pitot heat is off, checked. Stereo lights can come off. That means the beacon. Avionics masters come off. Mixture goes to idle cutoff. Ignition goes to off. And finally the master, battery and alternator come off. And there we have it, everyone. Welcome to the windy Floro Airport. Thank you for flying with me today. It was definitely a pleasure having you on board and sharing the virtual skies with you. I think hopefully I'll look out for some better weather before I try this again. But it seems that the Nordic regions in winter are not something that you need to or are able to mess around with. If you enjoy what I'm doing, please like and subscribe. It really goes a long way and I really appreciate it. If you have any suggestions for any aircraft you want to see me fly next, please drop it in the comments below. Until next time, Flyaway J is out. Peace.